iHeartArt is proudly brought to you by ArtShed Online. For art supplies of all kinds at great prices, visit Australia's #1 art supplier at artshedonline.com.au.
Welcome back to another episode of iHeartArt. I'm Ying Wang, and last time we were starting to draw this portrait of a Japanese artist called Yayoi Kusama. So we've done most of the line work, and this episode we're going to finish up that line work, add some colour, and start to create a repeat pattern. So I do a lot of digital illustration, just to fill you in with what we did last week. And what's great about it is that you can make heaps of mistakes, and it's totally fine. You can just press Command Z. So, I think I've just brought up something else. Just escape the magnifier. There we go. So we're just working on the collar, and we're going to just finish off adding these finer lines. So to do these finer details, I'm just using a smaller brush because you can just get kind of things that you wouldn't do if you were using like a larger brush, which sounds very self-explanatory, but does make a difference. I really like doing line work based illustration because you get some really interesting texture, and because I don't tend to do much shaded work, the line work is really the basis of a lot of my illustration. So just adding in some details on the neck. Last time we spoke about just kind of working in the creative industry and the kind of weird things that you could encounter. And I was talking about how I worked at this company where they got me to draw all these robots and just machines I didn't understand. And I remember that, they were really passionate about wanting to venture into illustration, but they didn't necessarily maybe understand it fully. So they would also ask me to do really odd creative jobs. So I remember for the Christmas party, the boss wanted a cardboard cutout of himself, and he thought that I should be the person to make this. And he kind of wanted it within the day, which I had no prior experience in making cardboard cutouts. So it took maybe a whole day, nearly 6 hours to do, from getting a photo, taking it to print production, heading to printing places and kind of explaining what I wanted. And it actually cost a fair bit of money too, so I now know how much it costs to make a cardboard cutout from scratch, which is a lot more than I thought it would be. And the reason why I wanted this was because the Christmas party was going to be at a golfing course, and he wanted one of the games to be to use this cardboard cutout as like a target that we would have to try and hit. And needless to say, that was kind of nearly the end of my venture into the corporate tech world. But it was pretty memorable. So I'm just adding some last final details. And now I think we will start to play with repetition. So currently I've got my 2 layers here with my detailed line work, which if you take away, you can just see the basic line work, and then also the basic line work. So I might just group these together. So they're one, and I'll just duplicate that as well. So we always have the original on hand, and I'll just merge this group so it's just one layer, and that makes it just a bit easier. So now I'm going to add color. So on a new layer and underneath, I'm going to also change my brush. So to add color, I think it's always good to add the broad strokes first, and I like using a thicker brush to do this. It's always good to play around with brushes as well to see what you like. And let's try out this one. So this one is quite nice. I like the thickness of it, so I might make it a bit bigger. And in terms of the color, the great thing about digital is that you can always change the color, so you don't have to worry too much, but it's good to kind of use complementary colours. So since we've got blue line work, we might go for maybe like either a pink or maybe like a peachy colour. Could be quite nice. So I've got my colour now, and I'm going to start just adding in and shading in her face. So this bit you don't really have to be too neat about, I think, as long as it's largely blocked in. We can always clean it up afterwards. And at the moment I'm thinking that it's actually a bit dark, and I might change the tone a little bit. So we're nearly done with the neck. And I feel like really an iconic part of Yayoi is her really bright red hair. So if you've ever seen photographs of her, she always has bright red hair, and it's kind of reflective of her work as well. So I think we might do that. So I'm going to create a new layer for her hair and choose a really bright, bold red and start to shade that in. So it's really great to have different layers because it keeps everything separate and it's nice and neat to work with. And it just kind of makes it easier for yourself if you ever want to change things, to not have everything in one basket. So again, I'm just going to roughly shade this in. So I want this to be like the base kind of color for this section. For the more detailed parts of the shading, I might turn to a smaller brush just because there are some parts that I really want to define, like the kind of sharp cut to her fringe. And I'll just change the brush now and make it smaller. So I might go to about half the size, and we'll zoom in and just make sure that's all shaded in. To kind of create more detail, a really good trick is to actually use the eraser tool, and you can change that to a different brush as well. So I might go for something small, and with the eraser you can actually just create negatives and get rid of these kind of excess bits. So you might actually want to show a bit of texture at the edge that's not quite as stark, especially for hair. And we're kind of missing a bit of red now, so we'll go back into the brush and just add those missing bits in. So sometimes it's a lot of back and forth with kind of digital illustration, but it's super quick, and you would not be able to do this with pen and paper. I feel like another weird story is that when people know that you can draw, they often ask you to do random things, and people request portraits. And I remember one time, one of my managers just asked me if I could draw portraits of them in several different ways. So we're nearly done with the line work and kind of colouring in this portrait. So after the break, we'll come back, finish off the shading, and then start to play around with repetition for this portrait. You're watching iHeartArt. You're watching iHeartArt, I'm Ying Wang, and today we're drawing a portrait of Yayoi Kusama. So she's this Japanese artist that I really like, and she's really well known for her colourful, eccentric artworks. So we were just finishing the shading for this, and we're going to add some more shading to the collar now, I think. And then after that, we'll start to play with repetition and kind of filling the whole page with her face. Currently, I'm just doing the hair, and I might start to neaten up the edges. So you can see there's some red that's kind of going outside the blue there, and we'll just get rid of that. So we'll just use the razor and shade that out. And it's super easy to do digital illustration. And we're just cleaning up the edges of her hair, the bottom here as well, and just where it meets the face. Although, to be honest, it's perfectly fine to have it there as well. It just depends on the look you're after. Another funny thing about the creative industry is how weird it is to have so many, I guess, online relationships with people, in the sense that you barely see people face to face. So a lot of work will start digitally. They might see your work online and then they'll contact you online, and you tend to just have these exchanges over email, and you may never actually meet the person. And it's quite a weird experience, because it's bizarre talking to so many people but kind of being alone most of the time. So I think now what we'll do is we'll add some color to the collar here, and we might go for maybe like a yellow shade and kind of have a primary color theme. So I'm going to go back into the brush, and I'm going to pick a large brush again to fill that in. So this one will be good. And we'll just test it out. So I might make it a little bit larger. Cool. And so again, I'm doing this on a separate layer. Just so it's a neater way to work, and it makes it easier if you make any mistakes at all. You can just clean it up. Because this kind of goes off the page and it doesn't really have a definite ending with this color, I might just overextend the color a bit, and it just gives me a bit more to work with when I start to play around with pattern and repeating this portrait against itself. I spoke last episode about collaborating with a fashion designer for Melbourne Fashion Week, and again, that was another example of having this kind of online relationship, and it actually started out with this email out of the blue where he kind of just asked me if I wanted to collaborate. And I feel like sometimes you get these odd emails and you kind of don't know if they're real or maybe they're a scam, but after some research, it was very much real, and we kind of continued to work just emailing and calling, and we started off with these illustrations of monkeys that I'd done, and he quite liked them, and so the challenge was to kind of adapt it for textile design, and so it involved kind of working out how to repeat the pattern for it to fit a fabric and playing around with different color combinations. And that's where it's good again to have things in different layers, because it allows you to change things after should you have any need to. And in this case, we wanted to change colors, and that came in handy. So we played around with color combinations and would send things back and forth. And then from then, I kind of didn't hear much. And I was kind of wondering what was happening. And then about 2 weeks to the show, I got a text message asking me if I wanted to attend the show. And I was like, of course. And I kind of rocked up and saw all the pieces for the first time. So I feel like sometimes when you do creative work, it can be, you might not hear anything for a while, and then suddenly things kind of appear. It was quite entertaining. And his show, so the designer's name was called Eric Yvonne, and he does some really amazing, colourful textile patterns, and he's really well known for his kind of eccentric designs, and they're really fun and bold. And the runway was actually in the underpass underneath De Grave Street, which was a really great place to have it, I think, to see it transformed. So what we're going to do now is just fix in some missing bits. So I'm going to grab my eyedropper tool and just select this skin color, and then go back to my brush and add in some of these missing parts. And then I'll just clean it up again with the eraser. So we've got some of the eyebrow here that would also be really great to have in the red. So again, I'll just create a new layer and grab my eyedropper, and then go back into the brush and create, kind of use a smaller brush this time, because the eyebrows are very detailed. So I'm going to go quite small and zoom in and just start to kind of draw some flicks into the brows behind this blue line work. I recently took part in a really weird design challenge. So it was part of the welcome party for AGDA, which is the national peak body for communication design. And they asked a whole bunch of kind of aspiring designers to come in to their welcome party, which was very much like a party. There was a DJ and there was music and it was a dark environment, and we had to bring our laptops and we were given this design challenge, and we were almost like meant to be the entertainment for the people attending the party. So you could imagine being in this converted warehouse in Collingwood and with a whole bunch of maybe like 20 other designers sitting in this dark room and responding to this design brief while all these people drink and enjoy the party around you. It was a 90-minute challenge, and there was another really bizarre experience, but it was pretty fun. And once you get over the fact that people were eating canapes and staring behind you at your screen, it's not too bad. So while I'm on this smaller brush, I'm just going to add more detail into this hair. And maybe on this side as well. And then I think the next thing I'll do is start to shade in the lips. So create a new layer, or maybe I might actually just keep it red, maybe orange. So I'll create a new layer. The general rule for layers sometimes is separate colors should be on separate layers. And I'll just start to shade that in. I picked orange just because I liked the idea of red, but I didn't want it to be exactly like red, but orange is kind of similar and still a warm color to work with. So we'll see you after the break, and we'll start to play with repetition and adjusting some of these color combinations to see what we like best. You're watching I Heart Art. Welcome back to I Heart Art. I'm Ying Wang, and last time we were just adding the color and finishing that part off. Now we're going to start to kind of change some of the colors and looking at different color combinations and maybe changing some of the line work color as well. So I think that the blue is quite nice, but we might actually try black. So since I've got all my blue line work on one layer, as you can see, I might just duplicate that again and then hide one and use a color overlay, which is just in the effects panel. So that will just add a color on top of it that's temporary, and you can always adjust it. So it allows you to play around with different colors in a really easy way. So right now we've got really dark black, but maybe it's quite stark, which is actually good, I think, given the subject of the portrait, which is Yayoi Kusama, and her work is very bold and eccentric, but I might just make it a little bit lighter. So we've gone for like a soft black here. So I'll just hit OK, and as you can see, you can easily just minus it and add it back on. So it's a really good way to kind of play around with color combinations without having to commit to anything. So we've got the black now, and I think looking at this reference image, she's got these kind of black polka dots on her shirt that I kind of want to add in. So we'll add a new layer on top of that, and I'll just eyedrop that black color and go back into the brush. We might just draw some black dots, really quite like, and see if I like it. So it's kind of very untechnical, just loosely drawing some black dots. Sometimes it's nice when you have a lot of dense line work that's quite detailed to add kind of chunks of solid black, because it tends to just add a bit of weight and balances it out a bit. Just take that away and zoom in on this collar area and add more of these dots. We'll add some that are kind of halfway off the collar as well. And I kind of like how they're a bit imperfect. I think it adds to the whole texture of it and they create interesting shapes. So I'm thinking maybe just 2 more. One more here. And that's pretty good. So that's kind of what it looks like so far. I think before we start to repeat things, I might just add some more detailed line work onto the face, but not in black this time, in a different color. So what I will do, I think I'll start on the face, and I might, again, just eye drop this skin color, and we'll head into here and just create a slightly darker, more saturated version of this, and then using the brush tool and making it quite small, we'll add some detailed line work. So I might just go into something about 20 or so. And then zooming in, I'm just going to add more lines again. So this just adds more detail, but it's not as stark as the black. I've just put this underneath the black, so the black is always on top. And this is especially good if you want to add more dimension into a face, or into any object really, where shadows would be, but using line work as your kind of vehicle to do that. So more around the eyes, the mouth, the nose. Just underneath the eyes is always darker, and kind of maybe just this eyelid as well. And the same for this other side. So there's kind of just freehanding this now based off where my original line work was. I really like creating repeat patterns out of my illustration because it kind of makes it a bit more abstract, and you can print it out really large, and they can create really nice kind of pieces of work to put in rooms. Just add something interesting. And because of the repeat pattern, when you go up close, there's still a lot of detail that's offered, but it also is quite bold when seen from afar. And we'll add some more, especially around this chin area. So looking at the reference image, the image is quite dark and around the chin, so we'll just zoom out to see how it's looking. Cool. So as you can see, there's already a lot more depth when you're adding in that. Cool. So now that we've zoomed out, we're going to group all of these layers with everything on it. And then we'll duplicate that. And then I'm going to merge this group. And once we've got that, we can start to duplicate that. It's a bit Inception-y. And we can start to repeat her. So this is kind of more a play of proportion. So I'm thinking it's a bit big. Whoops. So I'll just make her maybe to that size. And then arrange her like so. And again, but I will place, just important to be aware of the order of the layers, so it all appears kind of seamless. So once you've got that, you can then group that as well. And you can duplicate the whole group. And this is a really good way to do something quickly. And kind of just move this to where I think would best fit. So what I might do, I might do that, and then I've got these extra heads that I'm not actually using, so I think I might delete some of them. I'm just checking. I think it's this one, that one there. Let's delete that as well. And you can kind of start to see it'll come together. I'll add some more in. I'll just get rid of this. Hide that. Adding some more. There's still some gaps that I want to fill. And again, and then also in front. See, we've got this cool repeat pattern going on, but there's still kind of bits of white. So I'm just going to eyedrop this yellow color and shade that there. And then add a bit more detail and final touches. So once you have the main illustration done, it's actually quite quick to then add anything else to kind of turn it into a repeat pattern. It makes it really easy. So we've just created our repeat pattern. I'm just going to fix this eye in the top left corner and just brush in a bit of white behind that because it looks a bit scary at the moment. And then I think we're nearly done. So there's the final piece. We've got this illustration using repeat patterns with Yayoi Kusama's portrait and heaps of layers, patterns, colors. So I think that's the finished piece. You've been watching I Heart Art. I'm Ying Wang. If you want to see more of my work, you can check out Instagram. It's just Yingstagram with 2 eyes, and I'll see you next time.
I Heart Art is proudly brought to you by ArtShed Online. For art supplies of all kinds at great prices, visit Australia's #1 art supplier at artshedonline.com.au.